Hello everyone, I am Tacit and I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Rock Hard Apps event in which the Paragon Statue is added to the game. So this week we have Brown Tower of Doom, and overall it's a little bit of a tamer week, pretty much until we have the very big next week, which ends up having the Dwarven Guild Wars, the start of the summer event, and the final week of the current campaign season, where we don't need to deal with submerged gems ever again for a very long time, or at least as a storm anyways. But yeah, this is basically the little bit of the lighter week before then. However, we do still have some pretty decent things going on. The main thing that's pretty noteworthy is the Mythic from last Friday that we covered a video on, of course, is still available today, tomorrow, Wednesday, and on Thursday. So if you want to still go get them in Glory Gem Guild or VIP chest, you still can. Or inversely, don't open those chests if you've already gotten them or don't want to end up getting a copy of them. And then you'd want to wait until Friday before you start opening them again. But these 4 days, you can still end up getting him, and he is a dwarf, so you can end up using him for the new Dwarven restriction for the Guild War. That's going to be taking place starting Thursday of next week. The other thing that's pretty noteworthy, of course, is that this is a Kazale week. So because this is a Kazale week, you can now event key for all of your dwarves that you basically need for the next Guild War. This is not something you were able to do for either of the two previous Guild Wars. Hopefully this is something that they start to do going forward. But it is actually targetable to get basically every single thing you need this week, either through getting the new Mythic that just came out or event keying just this week until you have all the things you need. Most notably, the 50% Mana Star Dwarf of King Highforge is the main thing you'd want to go for. And beyond that, we have a weakened Bounty Hunter. Pretty weak troop, but overall just standard Bounty Hunter. Either just do the free battles or pay about 7-10 gems to go get all of the rewards. But anyways, with that being said, let's go straight to the event keys. First things first, of course, if you haven't already, don't forget you can go to shop, go to resources, and get your 10 event keys. So even if you have none, you can get these pretty easily just by going for that and getting some glory. If you don't already have some laying around, though you probably do, given that we just had a Vault event weekend. Like 2 glory gnomes, 3 glory gnomes pretty much pay for that every single week. But anyways, so event keys, of course, as we were mentioned, it is a Kazale drop. But you know, let's open some. I don't really need anything here. Oh, nice. Gorgotha tank. Unfortunately, not a dwarf, though. Not the dwarf we're looking for. The main thing we're looking for, you know what, we'll go for him. We'll keep opening keys until we get the one we're looking for. Let's see, how many does it take? Let's just see. We're looking for the 50% Mana Star Dwarf. We are 200 in, and we have not seen him. We are 250 in and have not seen him. We're 300 in, and there he is, King Highforge, the thing you basically want to throw event keys for this week until you get him. He stuns the last 2 enemies and deals a bunch of damage to them, boosted by allied dwarves, which of course, given a dwarf restriction for Guild Wars, your entire team is likely to be dwarf, except for maybe your hero. The Rune Priest hero class is dwarf, or can end up working out pretty well, so you're probably going to want to run that. And also gets to summon a dwarf, so he even has backup summon for if you start falling behind. Of course, the main reason you're using him, though, is not necessarily for his ability, even though his ability is okay. But it's for the 50% mana start to all dwarves. Your entire team is restricted to dwarfs, so having a 50% mana start will help out a lot, compared to only having a 20% mana cost. I wouldn't say he's necessarily 100% required, but I would highly advise throwing your event keys this week to go and get him if you plan to partake in next Guild War, as it'll make next Guild War a ton easier than it would be otherwise without him. So 100% make sure you go event key for him this week until you get a copy. In our case, it took about 300, and that sounds about right, given that it's a 3.2% chance. I believe there's like 3-4 mythic, so he has about a 1% chance or so. So about a little bit overdrop right then. But he's about a 1% or 0.7-ish, depending on how many legends are in the kingdom. That being said, as far as what is and is not in the drop table, actually, let me double check, because you, and... Okay, just those 3. So yeah, you have about a 1% chance, so we got pretty unlucky then, because it's about a 1% chance per event key that you open that you'll end up getting King Highforge. And we went 300. We should have had 3 by then, but we only got 1. But yeah, that happens sometimes. But yeah, within about 100 event keys, you should get him if you don't already have one. And of course, you can get 10 of them from the thing we just showed earlier. And then the rest of them, hopefully, from your Vault keys that you got last Vault weekend. But anyways, as far as things that are not in drop table, this includes the 5 troops from Emperor, which are only from Thoran Kioshar's Emperor faction in Underworld. Aside from that, the other things that are not in drop table include the Tarot card of the Empress. Oddly enough, strongest Tarot card in the entire game. Gives a bunch of skills to the last ally and a small chance of extra turning. But this ends up giving the full amount of its magic value and magic to your last slot. This is very niche, but really good for boosting up, especially if you get this early on in the game and you don't really have a proper magic booster, just kind of want to end up building a team around whatever your best troop is that hits all enemies. This is a really good way to end up building around it, especially if you need just a little bit more in order to one-shot a certain game mode or something similar. Unfortunately, this is not in the event key drop table. It is specifically in the Vault key drop tables, so any Vault keys that you have from last weekend. And beyond that, yeah, that's it. Oh, sorry. And Darksmith Drenza, which is only from throwing a bunch of chaos shards at him for all the various components that he needs in the Soul Forge. So those are things that are not a drop table. Overall, is the drop table any good? No. The only reason you're throwing event keys is basically for High Forge. To get High Forge and to fill out any gaps you have in Dwarves. The two main ones that you really want is at least one copy of High Forge, ideally enough to get a max if you don't already have the resources to do otherwise, and one copy of Apothecary, which you should easily have laying around or get through event keys very quickly. But having this, really nice. It's probably going to be your main cleanser for the game mode for Guild Wars next week, as it cleanses all allies, and it also gets to transform all mana color into brown, which a lot of dwarves end up using brown. Like almost every other thing on your team is probably going to end up being brown. The other third one is, I guess, a little bit worth mentioning too, which is optional if you do or do not go down that route, depending on how much of a quick start you want to have. But Gimlet ends up transforming all green to brown. I believe it's only Empower from this location as well. So if you have to use an Empowered Dwarf, I believe it's the only one that can convert. There are a few other dwarves that have Empower in the game, but unfortunately, they're not really good. Like, they don't have board control or anything. Like, all they have is damage or damage. Like damage to giants, damage to monsters. So Gimlet is the only one that ends up having board control, which is nice. Also gives Enrage and a bunch of HP to your first ally. They try to keep it alive if you want to go like a more score-oriented team with it as well. But what you can do, because there are dwarves from other locations, we talk about a lot more next weekend, or next week when the Guild Wars are around. But there is a skull route if you go down the Drakzoom route. So if you go down Drakzoom Dwarf, if we go over to Kingdom, there is a bunch of stuff here. Keep in mind all this stuff is not in drop table, but there's a bunch of things that are dwarf that have a skull mechanic here that can definitely offset whatever else you don't end up getting. But the main premise this week is to go through event keys so that you can get everything from Kazale, all the core stuff. The main ones being Apothecary, Gimlet, and High Forge, so that you can just kind of fill out from there. But if you do get some of like the better stuff from this place, you can also offset into a more skull-oriented team with King Bloodhammer and Ghost King Grimhorn, probably in the main two. Unfortunately, there's no way to target these up until that point, so if you don't have them, there's a good chance you might not be able to get them, unless they fall in Soulforge this week or next week. I haven't actually checked Soulforge yet, maybe they are. With that being said, let's actually go check Soulforge right now. Let's go see what's up with Soulforge. I'll probably go over all the teams. So, as far as troops, why is Artima so weird with the shininess? What happened? The shininess broke the card. Never noticed that. Wardbreaker, that would have been useful for the other Guild War. Unfortunately, not so much anymore. Though, Wardbreaker is worth mentioning, I guess, in the sense that this is the first time he's been in Soulforge since he's been buffed. Last Guild War, when it was a Centaur restriction, or Divinity Field restriction, whatever it was, one or two. I think it was Divinity Fields, actually. But last Guild War, about a month ago, this ended up getting buffed. He got buffed a long while back from a 32 to 30 mana cost, and about a month ago, he also got buffed from a 30 mana cost down to a 28. So he's as powerful as he's ever been. He's basically like a Gorgotha, but he does damage to all enemies. So instead of having 15 mana cost, it's 28. But it makes up for that by being able to do damage to all enemies. So overall, not too bad. It's basically a Gorgotha that does damage for about double the mana cost. But not as bad because he uses 3 colors instead of 2. For the most part, not really used too often. In the dragon category, it's generally pretty bad compared to other dragons in the game. However, in the centaur category, it's basically one of the strongest centaurs in the game. So situations where that is useful, that can be good. Though it doesn't pop up too often, and one of the times where it does pop up, we just recently had, so it's not likely to occur anytime soon again. So yeah, that's pretty much the only thing as far as mythics that are really over the top. Just making sure I didn't miss any here. Oddly enough, this is both in Event Key and in Soulforge this week. It's really bad, though. It's not worth using. Let's see. Alright, so as far as weapons, War and Peace is pretty good. I think you still get this for free from just completing out the questline, though, so not really a need to go and craft it. I would say the main one that you're probably going to be using, and I believe I showed one of the teams for it, which we'll be getting to in a moment now, might as well go there next, is the Doom Sledge. So the Doom Sledge does a bunch of heavy splash damage to an enemy, plus 4 per tempering levels up to 40 damage, which is up to 30 to the 2 adjacent. So that's up to 100 extra damage per cast if you end up using it on 2nd or 3rd slot, assuming the ones around it are still alive. That's honestly not that bad. And then it stuns all brown enemies and cleanses all brown allies. It also gets a few explodes to try to get some mana accumulation back. So overall, not that bad. Not the greatest weapon out there, but when it comes to a Kazale restriction where you have to use a Kazale weapon, it can be pretty decent. Though keep in mind for next Guild War, it is a Dwarf restriction, so you're allowed to use any weapon. But it's pretty good for some stuff this week, most notably Underspire, since you do have to use a Kazale weapon. And this or War and Peace are pretty much your main 2 weapons, with Doom Sledge being ideally the slightly better one. Though, of course, you can also go for mana accumulation options. Beyond that, before we go over teams, of course, Brown Doom, Basically, same thing as always. Just go and buy yourself tier 4. This ends up giving you every single reward, enough Doom sigils to go and help out your guild, and just a nice mix of reward as well as being able to help your guild finish out the event. Basically, go communicate with your guild to scout out wherever all of the more useful rooms are, whatever ones your guild wants to end up keeping track, with the ones that are always useful being Fireball, Heroism, and the Unlock, and just have your guild go for all the same ones, as it is not the same from guild to guild, but within your guild of your 30 members or however many guild members you have, it is the exact same. So you want to communicate with your guild where all the better rooms are, and then only take those better rooms. And ideally you want to go all the way until floor 26 up to floor 25's completion, as this will give you the maximum amount of these scrolls, as you do earn one of these extra stone scrolls, forge scrolls every single time you end up completing out one of the dooms up to floor 25th completion. This isn't as big a deal these days, given that orbs can kind of offset it from things like Vault Event weekends and such, but still nice to have, as this is basically enough to half max out a weapon just from the battles that you end up doing, and counting that with the little bit of extra that you end up getting from buying up to tier 4, it's a little bit more than half of a Doom weapon being max. So the new Doom weapon or any other Doom weapon, you can end up upgrading with that then, and then offsetting, of course, with the orbs that you might have laying around. Beyond that, let's go into teams now then. So we were just talking about Brown Tower of Doom. Obviously, your whole team has to be brown. This does include your weapon. Though, of course, your weapon has to be the doomed thing. You do get double score for using this weapon. You technically only have to use this on the Doom fights, but I would just advise using on all of them just so you don't forget to have to keep switching it back and forth. Otherwise, it gets really annoying having to copy-paste your team back and forth every single time. So I would just advise using it for every battle, even though you technically only have to use it for the Doom battle. For this first team here, we're actually just doing Mechanist. This is mostly to get rid of any Submerge or any other annoying mechanic. Keep in mind, this week and next week, or the last 2 weeks, we have to deal with the Submerge gem, that one little blue fish gem. So you do still need anti-Submerge, just in case the enemy ends up getting it. Even if the enemy team has no Submerge during the season, they still have the ability to Submerge. So the last 2 events that we really have to deal with this for is the event right now for Tower of Doom and next week's Guild War, probably the 2 biggest events that we still have going on that we have to deal with the Submerge gem. So keep in mind Mechanist, stuff like that. Rune Priest for when you do it for Guild Wars, going to be really useful, as they both have, of course, Dispel on extra turn, assuming you have them to level 70. You'll be able to have Banishment, which per extra turn dispels all positive status effects, which of course includes things like Barrier, Bless, stuff like that, but more importantly includes Submerge, which we still have to deal with those Submerge gems for 2 more weeks. Anyways, beyond that, we're just running a pretty standard, just run whatever your biggest damage source is here. We're running Flower Dragon. If you don't have that, run Stellarks. If you don't have that, run whatever your best brown damage source is that hits all enemies. And we're using Double Pharaoh in order to go and feed the mana. Unfortunately, can't go Double Takshaka, but Double Pharaoh ends up working out pretty well here. And of course, our heroes just tanking to end up winning out the battle. And for the other battle, we're doing a somewhat similar premise, except we're getting a little bit more diverse with our damage source. We're using Bork as our main mana accumulator here. We're using Mech not just for the Dispel here, but also 50% mana starts are Bork, so we only need 6 mana instead of 12 in order to get it up. This is still just tanking as it normally would. And for our low rarity options, I am actually including the Immortal. This is actually the new Immortal that just came out. If you don't have this one, you'll definitely almost guarantee have the Orc one from the season, so you can use that. I only showed this here because it's a little bit better than the Orc one, but if you do only have the Orc one, he's very easy to earn just from doing a little bit of PvP. Even just end up getting to Diamond rank in PvP will just automatically give you the copy of him this season, so you can end up going that, or any brown Immortal that you have that's decent damage. This just tends to be one of the slightly better ones as far as what's out there right now, even though he's relatively new. So even if you have no traits at all, it doesn't even matter, as you're mostly just doing him for his true damage. He ends up doing a bunch of true damage to all enemies, and also gets to convert 6 yellow gems into green dragon gems, which can man accumulate back into himself. Beyond that, we're using Nocturnia here. Nocturnia you get for free just from throwing a bunch of Chaos Shards at Fel Roost. You can get it pretty quickly, even just a Tuesday faction event this tomorrow. Just doing that alone will probably give you way more than enough to get a copy, or even 2 copies if you don't have the other Immortal, in order to run this. It's basically just a heavy true damage splash, and keep in mind, splash does end up working for for the true damage too. So it's actually doing true damage splash for the other 2, so it's doing 75% true damage to the 2 adjacent. So overall, a pretty nice amount of damage. It does end up ending its turn, but does have the benefit of having a chance of summoning a egg. So if you do start losing options on your team, you will keep getting resummons. So overall, your team shouldn't really end up dying. I believe it even gets more off of its extra turn too. What is this? 50% chance to spawn a Fel Dragon with a... Oh no, this is on death, never mind. But yeah, it just gets to do it off a cast then. So 20% chance per cast. Cast this about 5 times, you'll end up getting a resummon then, roughly on average. But it's mostly just backup resummon, and then you're just doing the two true damagers in order to do all your damage pressure. And of course, if you don't have this Immortal, you can end up replacing it with Nocturnia or any other brown Immortal, as well as the Orc one from this season. As far as the faction event, this is a yellow-brown, I believe? Yellow-brown? Yellow-brown? Yes, yellow-brown. So it is a yellow-brown restriction. So as far as what you would end up needing running here, we're running pretty much as a standard Atlanta team here, using Ihi Cattle in order to go and convert blue to yellow to give all the mana to it, and then just using its 75% mana start to get some really quick kills off of it. Black Manacle here to offset, though you can also just set up 2 or 3 Atlanta. I'm using Archmages here, but you can use whatever hero class you still need to go level. As far as the level 100 to 500 range, we're just running a mass mana accumulation build into just a double insta-kill. It is keys hiking Iron Gut into Catharix for double insta-kill. One would Devour, the other one just would outright insta-kill with extra turn chance. And of course, Iron Gut having auto extra turn. As far as the Pure Faction team, we're running double Emperor Nazar with double Kobold Knight. The main premise of running Pure Faction here is to use the final trait on Emperor Nazar in order to stack a bunch of magic onto your Kobold Knight. He ends up scaling the best alpha magic of anything within the kingdom, and then he ends up doing his damage poke until you end up winning. He has a 50% chance to extra turn every single time you end up casting him, and he basically just damage pressure them down by taking a bunch of extra turns off the board in order to get them rolling off the ground, and just keep spamming that. And if they end up happening to die, it will make the battle take a little bit longer. However, this thing does have 1 to 2 summons that ends up doing every single time, so you'll keep replacing out your team over and over again. So even if they do end up dying, as long as both your Emperor Nazars don't end up going down, you're pretty much going to be good to go. Not to mention, every time you cast one of these, you gain a bunch of durability for your team. The main thing that's annoying, the main reason why you need to ramp up, is the enemy Emperor Nazar is the biggest threat on the final battle. You need to kill it as quickly as you possibly can. It's one of the reasons why you want to stack a bunch of magic, as this thing will end up gaining a ton of HP for the enemy team, to the point that they might even reach 1000 HP, which is the whole reason why you need to stack these things magic level, so that you can go and kill it out quick enough, so that you can outpace the enemy's Emperor Nazar, so you can kill the enemy's Emperor Nazar, so you can then go win the battle. It's pretty much the main thing that kind of bottlenecks this one. I wouldn't say it's the most annoying, but it's one of the more time-consuming Pure Factions to go do out of any of them, especially if you have lower stats, as if you have higher stats, your base stats might be enough to just outpace it. But at lower stats, you're definitely going to have a little bit of a long battle, potentially even like half an hour battle. But once you get them going, you should be good to go. But it is a pretty long Pure Faction battle, among one of the longest in the game. That's not really that annoying, it's just about stacking your team, as it's pretty safe to not die, it's just a matter of winning. It's slow. Anyways, as far as Rune Priest class event, this is a dwarf restriction specifically from Keyzale. Of course, all these things you can end up getting at event keys too, and end up bolstering up your dwarf Guild Wars for next week as well. But for this team, we're running a Ruby, which is not something you'd run for next Guild War, but we're running the Ruby. Actually, yeah, it is. Never mind. Because you can run any hero weapon for the next Guild War. So yeah, technically you could use this for that. I don't think you would want to, though, because this is, of course, just for quick kill for the class event this Thursday. Just to claim your 25 gems, get in and get out. If you don't have the Ruby weapon, you just run Black Manacle. I just ran Ruby here because it's a little bit better. But if you don't have it, simply just run Black Manacle. You'll be perfectly fine. Gimlet for to convert to brown to go get all of the mana going. 50% mana start to all of your dwarves. Keep in mind, while it's not a lot, Rune Priest does have 10% extra stats this week. So, you know, a little bit extra bonus as well for the little bit extra damage. It's a few extra true damage you can end up getting on the opposing team, as well as whatever weapon you end up doing. And this is mostly just for the brown link, more so than anything, just to get your mana going for your hero, which is also why we're full in on the double brown on banner. As far as Underspire, this is specifically Keyzale restriction. As far as Keyzale restriction is concerned, this does include weapon. And as we were mentioning earlier, Doom Sledge from Soulforge probably could be your best overall weapon for most situations. Just does a lot of damage, especially if you end up maxing out. Just has Brownstorm, ends up having that extra, basically 100 total damage they end up getting from its extra tempering levels. Ends up giving a bunch of, oh, never mind, it just drains mana. I thought it gave mana to Browns. This isn't one that does that, is it? I thought it gave 2 mana to all Brown allies. It just drains 2 mana from Brown enemies. But you still get the Brownstorm, so that's still nice. So you get the Brownstorm so you can keep that perpetual, so you can keep getting even more brown onto the board. And just using Apothecary for to convert and cleanse for even more brown. High Forge to get everything 50% mana started. And then just spamming your Doom Sledge until you win. And this hero class does have barrier on brown. It is one of many barrier on brown hero classes, so you're just using that to go and tank out forever. And hopefully your hero ends up never dying then, and ends up being really tanky. We're doing something similar for elementals, so in a little bit of a different build here. We're basically going into an all-in skull spam build. This is actually possible with both dwarves as well as with just Keyzale restriction. While this is not a dwarf itself, it is Keyzale, of course, and ends up creating a bunch of skulls boosted by brown allies and enemies. It's basically exactly like that one giant that ends up doing so, where he ends up doing it based on blue allies and enemies. This one ends up doing it based on brown allies and enemies. So it ends up creating a brown potion gem whenever it ends up taking skull damage while having a really high amount of skull reduction. Ideally, this won't end up triggering for the enemy, because if you end up getting to utilize it, it will give you a lot of value for how many gems you could end up getting from that. But basically, by default, with your entire team, you'll be creating at least 10 skulls, and for every brown on the opposing team, you'll be creating an additional 2 skulls. So if they have at least 2 browns, there'll be 14 skulls every cast, which is not that bad at all. Using Mountain Crusher is our main mana accumulation weapon. If you don't have this already, you just get this from leveling up your hero a little bit further, putting it into Brown Mastery, and you get it by around like 30, 40, 50, whatever it is. But you get this automatically for free as you go on. Most noteworthy thing is it gives Brown Storm, and this is the one that gives mana to all other allies. It gives 2 brown mana to all allies, brown allies, which of course in this case is your entire team, which also gives you quite a bit of extra durability bonus. We're only using 3 Keyseal here, though. The main reason for this is we are running Elementals. You can run Rune Priest if you want. The only problem with that is we're not using a 50% mana start troop on this. You can if you have it, of course, which is pretty easy to go get, and you probably should go get it. Though this team does assume you don't bother to get it or don't happen to end up getting it, as we do not use any legends or at all on this team. But of course, if you do want to end up building around that, you can end up incorporating that into a low rarity team too, as well as just doing that to still run Rune Priest. But we're using Emperina here instead. The main reason for this is it gives a bunch of life and attack, but most notably it cleanses and fully heals an ally. Fully healing, not really a mechanic that gets used too much. I'm really curious if they're ever going to add a troop in the game that like fully heals an ally when you take an extra turn or something. Like fully heal your whole team would be kind of crazy. But actually that would be so broken. You'd have to just like buff, you'd basically have to buff up to be able to kill them. Otherwise, they're just going to keep full healing every time. But anyways, it's one of the few troops in the game that has full heal. So essentially, it ends up increasing their HP and attack, and every single time you end up using it, it will just fully heal them back to whatever their max HP is, which of course he keeps increasing because whenever you give life to an ally, their max health will increase. So this thing will be brought all the way to 250, in our case, over 250, and he'll be very durable to make sure he doesn't end up dying, especially in combination with his 50% skull reduction, and gain the extra attack value, of course, will make sure that he'll do better skulls. You do have to give up your turn, but overall, you're getting a lot of value for it. You also end up getting Fire Link, so you can end up getting a little bit of extra mana there as well. And beyond that, we're using Excavator here. Ends up destroying a column and creates a bunch of red gems boosted by brown gems destroyed. And of course, you're going to be getting a lot of brown gems from the Brown Storm from your Mountain Crusher. So you'll be able to go utilize that in order to feed your main core of your team, which of course Living Quartz into Emperina, or Marcel Emperina into Living Quartz. And that's pretty much the game plan. You're using your Mountain Crusher plus your Excavator to feed mana to your team, and then you're using Living Quartz and Emperina in order to go and kill out the opposing team with skulls. Keep in mind, you don't want to cast your Living Quartz immediately. You want to go and get Mountain Crusher to full mana first. So you're going to get your Living Quartz to full mana, then get your Mountain Crusher to full mana, and then cast Mountain Crusher. Do not cast your Living Quartz before you cast your initial Mountain Crusher, as you need that extra amount of mana accumulation to get everything going. And ideally, by then, your Excavator would also be full mana, so you can offset that. And then you can end up casting your Living Quartz in Emperina, as it doesn't matter if you don't have your Mountain Crusher, as you'd still be able to go use your Excavator to go get both of those up another time. And doing an Emperina Czar into Living Quartz, Emperina Czar into Living Quartz should win most of the battles, especially earlier on. Earlier on, you might even want to run something like War and Peace, just because it might be a little bit quicker, like a War and Peace quick kill team. This is really accessible, and you'll need it just to quickly kill out like the first 2 floors. But then after that, you'd want to be running this, particularly on floor 5 and 6 if you plan on going all the way through. Though I do have to say, it is a relatively slow week to try to go all the way through, regardless if you're using the high rarity or low rarity team, as you don't really have access to insta-kill, and your damage options are not the greatest, which is going to be a big restriction with the upcoming Guild War as well. And as far as Bounty Hunter, while we don't have to copy-paste for them because it's impossible to copy-paste them with the new troop that's coming out this Friday, the main 2 Bounty Hunter teams are Ogress Warrior with Flower Dragon or Stellarix or whatever your best damage source is, into Forest Gremlin if you're going for the 3-option quick kill, where you run 2 bounty captains, or 2 bounty troops with the bounty captain that's coming out this Friday. Or of course, if you're going for max score, still best is to go all in true damage, unless you want to mess around with a skull build, but still just the most consistent, just running a true damage build if you're going for 4 times build, which is Ogress Warrior, Tagraki Warrior, Corpse Smear, and whatever the new bounty captain coming in this Friday is. New bounty captain's pretty weak. Not sure if I showed it. I think I did on stream, but I didn't for this video. But this right over here is what it ends up doing. It's nothing too special. I think it's right here. Yeah, it ends up dealing magic plus 6 scatter damage, and then burns 1 to 2 enemies. Oh no, just not really doing much. There's not really anything under bounties that really have burn boost ratio for the most part. And the fact that it's not even like 2 guaranteed makes it kind of bad. And yeah, it's just not really doing much for traits either. Nothing really particularly over the top. It's one of those bounty captains that you're going to use for the bounty hunter this weekend and then never touch it again for the rest of time. It's definitely one of those in that category, unfortunately. And of course, all those teams will be in copy-paste other than the bounty teams, which will just have the names for them. So, other things. Other events we have going on. We kind of showed it with the calendar thingy earlier. But Tuesday, we have Vampirina's faction event for the Brown Yellow restriction. Wednesday, we have ourselves the Brown Mastery Pet for this Wednesday. Thursday, we have the set class event for Rune Priest. You're probably going to be using this as your main hero class for next Guild War. There are other options you can be doing. Obviously, just running Elementalist, still running Mech. But overall, Rune Priest is probably going to be your best option for most teams for next Guild War. So if you wanted to try getting it upgraded a little bit, either power grind it on Explore, or you could even throw some gems on it this Thursday. It is pretty expensive to do that, but if you want to get it up in a pinch, it is a pretty good hero class to have, particularly at least to level 70, so you can get the Dispel. And if you have it fully maxed, also gets a billion extra immunities as well. Definitely not required to run for next Guild War, but definitely very helpful hero class. And as we can see here, of course, we have Bounty Hunter on the Friday. And, yeah, I think that's everything then. Only other thing to really mention is the second to last week of the campaign, so don't forget to try to finish this up. Of course, most of these tasks get done automatically, so not really something you really need to go that far out of your way for. But this week and next week are the final 2 weeks for that. And beyond that, I guess I technically didn't go over the new troop, but it is really bad. It's skilled for early game. If nothing else, if you need some brown-blue arcanes to go stock up to upgrade something, now's the time. But, yeah, it's pretty bad. It's 5x5 explode, which that itself isn't bad. But the follow-up on it is, it just gives a bunch of allies armor for every single brown gem destroyed. So if you end up destroying 10 brown gems with this, you will end up getting 30 armor for your team. That is not a lot. In early game it is, in arena it is. Though this isn't epic, so running this as your epic is probably not the best idea for arena. But yeah, it's just bad. Even if you're a brand new player, I'm not even sure you could bother using this. I guess if you really wanted to with your Rowan, and you just really didn't have any other way to get her armor or something, or if you wanted to do this with a Tesla build, and you just didn't have any other way to really buff up your Tesla, but you happen to have a Tesla, this could be okay, but honestly, I think you would get better value just from running Templar. Literally a troop that the game launched with. I do believe they buffed him at one point, but literally just running Templar will end up doing more value than this guy that came out today. It's 10 mana cost, has Water Link. So not only is only 10 mana cost instead of 14. It has Water Link, so you can get it up in 2 turns as long as you surge on one of the two, either on your brown or your blue. One of the 2 matches do need to be a blue. He still has score reduction. It's not as high as the other guy that has, what, 50%? But at least he has some score reduction. And he ends up giving way more armor. Well, I guess it depends on your magic, but still, he has a boost ratio that can get it quite a bit higher, too. He ends up giving a bunch of armor to all allies and transforms green, all red to green. So not only is he getting boost ratio from that, so if you convert about 10 of those, that's an extra 5 armor. Not as much as the other guy per thing, but you're still getting a lot of extra armor overall. But you have extra turn potential as well. Not that the 5x5 doesn't, but you have a lot more control with a red to green convert compared to a 5x5 as far as your overall chance of extra turning. So when you compare it to this for how much lower its mana cost is and still doing, you know, a relatively similar effect. And this guy pretty much came out at launch, or did come out at launch. He did get buffed, I believe, at one point, slightly. But he literally came out at launch, and now a troop like 11 years later, 10 and a half, and it's barely better. And in many cases, probably even worse, depending on how you're building a team. Yeah, he's just not strong enough. He is definitely not strong enough, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I don't really see a use case for this unless you just started the game within like the last few weeks, in which case even then barely you're going to be using it for Wayne and Tesla, and then probably drop it in like another week. But overall, yeah, nothing too special. Very heavily skilled for early game, and because of that, just won't really see much of a use case pretty much ever, unfortunately. But anyways, guys, that's a full rundown on everything. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. We'll be streaming tonight, doing the entirety of the Tower of Doom at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. And yeah, pretty chill week, basically just to catch up on things before the very absurdly active next week. And we'll go from there. Anyways, guys, hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.